I mean, it just goes to show the limits that we can continue to push when it comes to space. Even now, after we've been to the moon before, we can still travel even farther. And it's been such a long time since we've done this. It's more than 50 years. The last time we sent humans back to the moon or was in 1972, so it's just an exciting time. And the fact that we do get to break this milestone and this record just is kind of like the cherry on top of the cake.
What's interesting too, Lauren, I think about movies we've seen or, in terms of space travel, and you go behind the moon and communications with Earth, right? The blackout period. They've got to live through that. And it's going to be a pretty long one. Walk us through what actually happens. And that's expected to happen, around 7 p.m. or 7:02 p.m. Eastern. Walk us through what actually happens.
Yeah, so the communications blackout, I think, begins around 6:45, 6:47 p.m. Eastern time. So that's when they pass between or on the other side of the moon. And so the moon will be between the capsule and Earth, preventing that line of sight. And it's a 40-minute blackout period. And during that time, they're in that blackout period, they will come their closest approach to the moon, roughly about 4,000 miles. It's a pretty far distance. The moon will look what they've described to be the size of a basketball in your outstretched hand. Still, it's the closest that any humans have gotten to the moon in more than 50 years. They'll also reach their furthest distance from Earth during that time, also after about 7 p.m. Eastern. But this is pretty normal. I mean, during the Artemis 1 mission, the uncrewed version of this flight, there was a blackout period. During the Apollo missions, there was a blackout period. So this is just a normal operating procedure. It is kind of an eerie time for us because we can't hear them, but everything should be working just fine during that time.
What's happening on board during this time?
Yeah, so things have already been well underway. The official lunar flyby observation period began around 2:45 p.m. Eastern. And during that time, Orion, the capsule that they're flying in, it oriented its windows so that it could give them a great view of the moon. And they've just been talking nonstop between them and the science folks in NASA's Mission Control about what they've been seeing, how they're describing what the various targets that have been deemed really important by the science team. And so it's just been great to hear them chatter back and forth about how they see it with their eyes, the way they've described them. They've had these really vivid descriptions of what it looks like, how the colors are changing, how their eyes are adjusting to the various lighting changes. And, their capsule is moving around the moon. The trajectory is changing as they're making these observations. And so it's really neat to hear how that changes what they see and how it's evolving over that flyby period.
And my understanding, when we talk about the clock ticking down, and you talked about the blackout period, but toward the end, right, there's actually an eclipse that they're going to see?
Absolutely. So something really neat that happens because they were able to launch on April 1st like they did, that once they've come around out of that blackout period, they should have an eclipse where the sun will pass behind the moon. And just like when we see eclipses here on Earth, they'll be able to study the sun's atmosphere or its corona, which is the wispy atmosphere that you see on the outside edges of the moons during an eclipse. And yeah, they'll get a very long view of that eclipse, and they'll also get to see various planets very vividly as well. So it's going to be a really spectacular sight. So today is just a really jam-packed day from a visual perspective for the crew, and we will also get to see those images too. And they're going to have some really neat high-resolution imagery that we'll get when they splash down. So it's just, we're going to continue to get presence for days to come.
That's so cool. I mean, somebody in your position and even who gets to cover this is awesome, but just for us and everybody around the world who's watching this, it's so cool for us too, Lauren. How do they get back to Earth? What happens on the Orion spacecraft that gets them back into Earth's orbit and then ultimately helps them splash down?
So the reality is they're already on their way back to Earth. The translunar injection burn that occurred on Thursday night, the burn that put them en route to the moon is actually the same burn that brings them back. So it's a neat little dance that they do with gravity that puts them on the slingshot around the moon, but then the Earth and gravity, so the gravity of Earth moon system eventually pulls them back. And so they are basically already on their way home. It's just that their way home happens to take them around the outside of the moon. And so it's just a leisurely journey back. And then on Friday is when they will re-enter Earth's atmosphere and splash down in the Pacific Ocean underneath parachutes.
And one of the things when they splash down that they're going to look forward to is actually using a toilet on Earth that works. You have a story out that you say the biggest headache has been their toilet. You got to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been, look, we got to have fun, and this mission, it's serious, but also it's fun.
It's also critical. I'm just going to say.
It is. It absolutely is. And yes, so unfortunately, there have been kind of minor glitches here and there, things that have been popping up that have been addressed by mission controllers and flight controllers. But yes, it seemed, from our perspective, it appears that the toilet is the one that seems to be giving them the most grief. So right after they launched, there was an error reading on the toilet, but they found out, it turned out that the pump for the toilet just needed to be primed. And I guess I'm not familiar with pumps, but sometimes you just need to add extra water to prime them and to wet them. And so that seemed to do the trick on that first day. But then later they had an issue with a wastewater dump. So they actually dump the contents of the toilet, the liquid contents of the toilet overboard periodically. And it was not there. It ended prematurely.
What?
And
Watch out for the space junk.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally.
I love
unfortunately, there was a blockage, and so they think that ice got into the vent line and was blocking the wastewater from being able to dump. And so they actually turned the spacecraft to bake in the sun to melt that ice. And that seemed to do the trick. But then I was just listening to the live stream earlier, and it sounded like they were no-go for the toilet again. So it's just, it's just a constant, this is a test mission after all, and we're learning things. And one of those things is how to properly use the toilet.
I mean, crucial, important, but in the grand scheme of things, like there are other things that could be much more problematic.